if you do want something done, do it yourself. I'm doing this video because I have commented and commented and commented on the Dom and Crimson Rogue's videos to review this monstrosity, the last serial killer. But they didn't reply. So I, Minimalist Theatre, decided to do it myself. Even though I don't really have any reviews, the only films I've done are me sitting in my pyjamas and singing, and I look like a complete mess. But, so, if you want to review something, do it yourself. And as you can see, there are serial killers, a couple have been crossed out. You may recognise some of these faces if you know anything about true crime. That's Ted Bundy, Aileen Wuornos, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Samuel Little. And as you can see, this cover is okay. It's a bit not very imaginative, but you can see that somebody is targeting the serial killers. Although if I get into the book, you'll see that they were not killed in that order, which means the cover doesn't make any sense. However, this is the best cover that I could find from the writer Rhonnie Fordham, and unfortunately the other one looks even worse. It looks like a collage that I could have done for school when I was 7. And by the way, Crimson Rogue, I am not ripping off what you said about Empress Teresa's covers looking like something you wrote when you were 6. This really is the best of the covers. You know, I wonder actually if I even have the body for reviewing things, because the Dom and Crimson Rogue and even Stranger Aeons, they look great. I kind of look like a sausage squeezed out of its skin. But we shall start. Over the years, the technology for hunting the world's worst serial killers has increased in the form of DNA and forensics. But what if a new technique is developed to stop young psychopaths before they kill any further? As you can see, it's an interesting concept. So let's have a look. What if time travel allows the government to exterminate serial killers when they're just kids? There is a lot of morality things with this that I will be going over somewhere in this video. Such is the claim a mysterious man named Kevin makes after being booked into Perry, Florida's modest police station. The sensational claim is his excuse for why he'd been arrested for murdering a 7-year-old girl and her parents. As the long night wears on, join Detective Sarah Barlow in her quest to uncover the shocking truth. So, let's begin on this monstrosity then. Okay, I put some notes on the front of this page that I'm going to have to go back to quite a few times. Okay, so it starts off describing the summer of 1970 in Florida, Labor Day. We don't have a Labor Day on this side of the pond, which means that I have absolutely no idea exactly what it's going on about. I know something about White after Labor Day, but I have really no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, and it actually starts off pretty well. It's a quaint description, no bad grammar so far, and believe me, I'll go on to that. But it's just a bit strange, really. So, okay. So it starts on page 2 as, these were the usual suspects. Senior citizens living off local security, drug addicts and drunks living off welfare and odd jobs, rehabilitated perverts from outside the city limits, and families simultaneously broken and broke. So essentially, yes, I get the picture, it looks pretty, but it's filled with white trash. Yet another phrase we don't have a bit. Right, Then it describes the stranger that's arrived. But still, something about the man seemed off. The stranger's slight smile was sent to the man hiding behind the barrier of a battered screen door. Weak armor for sure, but a perfect spot for speculating. This man is described as wearing a short sleeve shirt and even tighter red flared pants. A headband wrapped around his curly, flowing blonde hair. The large glasses an accessory to this all-American handsome face. So this man goes towards a trailer where there are a family sitting outside, the father in the wading pool and overweight daughters just floating around in the pool, both under the age of 10 years old. And it's described as being a blue-collar paradise. The stranger got closer. No one was around to warn the family. Their momentary happiness enough to keep them oblivious. This level of joy too few and far between for Ben Slaughter's family to notice the armed animal on the attack. So, it talks about the father and the mother, who were, I'm not really sure whether in real life these people are dead yet. Well, I'm almost certain that the father is, because he was 65 in 1970, which pretty much means he's already dead at this point. I'm not sure about the woman, who was aged 23, and both of her children under the age of 10 years old. Yes, I realise what that sounds like, but unfortunately, this was a real family in real existence. The couple's beer bellies bordered on obesity. Patsy's bikini unflattering everywhere except her height. After years of hard living, abuse and poverty, Patsy's appearance somehow didn't look out of place next to a husband 49 years her senior, even when Ben's grey beard looked to be made of Spanish moss. Clinging to a Budweiser, a laughing Ben splashed water over his daughters. They're giggling much-needed music on this Everett summer day. The cultural contrast was evident the second the stranger stepped onto the scene, in front of the pool. "Ben!" a worried Patsy yelled. Startled, Ben looked right at the handsome man, the unease sinking in even as Christine and Tina's heavy weight sunk through the pool. He sat completely still on the lawn chair, the sunlight stinging his vision, but he could see enough to notice the man glowering at him. So, even though this family was a real family in life, it seems to start pretty well. You can see. Like an indifferent scientist, the man confronted her, his test subject. The Perry, Florida sun, a spotlight to the pale skin and 70s fashion. "Are you Patsy Slaughter?" he asked in a stilted, dry voice. Patsy just looked at him, all nervous and jittery. All the while, Tina and Christine kept playing, cackling. The noises the only ones in the silence. They splashed through the water with reckless abandon. A dumb naivety prevalent. Their interest only in the game, not the mystery. The stranger waited in the tension for an answer he already knew the answer to. "Really? You want to talk like that?" As Crimson Rogue said, there's a little bit of a writing style, and that's if you can avoid using the same word twice in the same sentence or paragraph, don't do it. Just remember what they did, the stranger reminded himself, who they really are. So, at this point, the father stands up and going on, "I don't know who the hell you are coming away with my girl." So, at this point, the man, still cool as a cucumber, grief, this is a bit of a difficult book to get through, but especially since these are real people in real life. It says, I know that you've abused those children. I'm sorry I had to put it out this way, and maybe I'll just add a trigger warning in the description below. But I'm afraid that's how it is. That's what happened. Of course, the parents immediately deny this and start swearing. And then at that point, the stranger shoots the father, who plops right back into the pool. Unfortunately, the children didn't even seem to notice. They didn't seem to notice that their father had died right in front of them. I'm not really sure what these two girls, women now, in real life are like. But from what the author here seems to indicate, is that they're not the brightest. In fact, he actually says this. They really aren't the smartest. I didn't know they were this bad. The mother starts yelling back, saying that the neighbours are already calling the police. With a gunshot like that and an argument, I actually wouldn't be surprised. At that point, the stranger ends up shooting the mother, and the children still don't notice. Burst of flames on the barbecue that they were using. It says right here, blood spread across the brunette's lifeless body, doing everyone a favour and turning that bikini into a wide crimson dress. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I know she was written as being horrible, and I've never met the woman, so I cannot judge her. But I don't know what she's like in real life. Was like in real life again. I don't know. She's still not in this timeline. But as you can see, the author does seem to be a little bit sadistic. And that's just a start. Then he turns his attention to the little girls. Tina and Christine didn't even notice when he stopped right beside the pool. They never took notice of his piercing eyes or revolver. Come with me, Christine, the stranger said, that clinical voice, tones of origins unknown. Now the two girls stood in the red water, clueless rather than confused. Their sloppy smiles remained. The man reached towards Christine's chubby arm. We're going to play inside, all right? Okay, Christine squeaked. Then, with excitement to spare, she grabbed hold of the stranger's hand. This is with her father's brain still on the guy's hand. I mean, if this wasn't about a real family and the situation wasn't so horrendous, then it would probably have been a bit funny. It's like something out of Family Guy. We're gonna go hide. With a trembling hand, he waved the revolver towards Tina. So you just stay there. Counts to 60, and when you're done, he pointed the Ruger at the pathetic trailer, you come inside and find us. Feeding her childhood joy only further unsettled the stranger. Just be glad the glasses hide the tears you can't. That's just silly. Together they stumbled through the soggy soil. Christine leading the charge onto that rickety wooden porch. All why only her sister's voice followed them. The sweltering Perry heat didn't bother the man, but the girl's innocence did, especially Christine's. Just remember what she'll become, a monster. A chorus of cheap fans greeted them. A living room populated by torn furniture, scattered beer bottles, snack wrappers, and roaches. Yeah, I get it, the white trash! So, as Tina is counting up, Kevin pulls up the courage to get the gun ready, and just as she finishes counting, he aims it at Christine. Remember, Kevin, she kills children, babies. Christine Falling is a serial killer. And then he shoots her. A single gunshot shattered the start of this childhood tradition, the sound definite enough to echo through the empty trailer park. And that's the end of chapter 1. Okay, chapter 2 talks about a flashback to December the 10th, 1951. Okay. The chapters alternate between third person and Kevin's first person, the diary he's written all this in. And that's why there are dates at the start of the chapters, those chapters. And again, I'm not sure if the author was going for a sullen Terminator type person. But unfortunately, this Kevin does show emotion. That emotion is essentially an uncomfortable glee in what he does. I mean, I know they're children that grow up to be serial killers, but they're still children. Children could be moulded. And all that stuff about history, you could do other things, which are pointed out later in the book. But it's just so uncomfortable the way he has to be happy about killing children. I've been sent back in time to kill bad people, and only the bad. No, I'm not being forced against my will. I'm just doing what's best for my country, what's best for all of us. Where have I heard that? The technology where I'm from lets me leap through time, through different eras. The assignments vary. All I get is the name, location, and proof of what crimes they committed in their lifetime. And then comes the simple part, extinguishing the evil. Wipe it from history before it ever happens. The list goes on so far, but I've yet to witness any butterfly effect. That's actually one of the points I put out. This man causes a paradox. If he went back in time and killed them, then there would be no reason for him to go back in time. I'll get on to this later. I know I have to say that a lot. It's just this sort of review. So he's in Cold December Park in Chicago. Goes up to a parked car. A chubby 9-year-old boy in the passenger seat. Unhappy because another fat man is molesting him. I have no evidence that this existed in real life. If it has, then I apologise. I did not research that properly. But so Kevin goes up and shoots the man. I don't blame him. With the fat little boy crying, even though Kevin is trying to calm him down. Pathetic. Like a loving parent, I rubbed his back. I know, son, I said. It's not your fault. I pulled him back, making him face me. I just want to help, I told the boy. That's why I'm here. You see, despite the fact that he's stopping killers, child killers, I don't think the author seemed to realise that he was writing Kevin in the same way that the child killers act, saying, it's not your fault, and being comforting, false sense of security. That's exactly what killers do. And this author is doing exactly that. He's doing... I don't know if this was supposed to be intentional or not, but it's uncomfortable. And there are a couple of charred turkeys on the ground. Tattered balloons, each of them filled to the brim with gasoline by the boy. Weeping, I faced him, caressed his pudgy face. I know, John. The boy's eyes grew bigger, bewildered beyond belief. How do you know my name? I didn't answer. Instead, I gripped his shoulder as I stood up. Just come with me, John, or let's get out of here. He gave me a weak smile. What's your name, mister? Kevin, I said. And just remember, I'm only here to help you, John. So... 1951 never felt colder. I couldn't even blame the snow, since there wasn't any in Chicago that day. Only the chilling company I made. The looming execution of one John Wayne Gacy. A portrait of a serial killer at a young age I had to erase. Bundy was tough, but this would be even tougher, even more tragic. After all, the ages were the most challenging part of the missions. Not executing evil, but having to do so before they reached their malevolent peak, when they were just children. You're trying to make Kevin seem sympathetic, but you're actually just making him look more sadistic. In addition, those who probably did buy the book to see serial killers get killed off would probably want to see Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer, because those are the killers that we remember. But he doesn't actually speak that much about Bundy and Dahmer. You don't even get the ages that they were killed. I mean, it's probably my OCD, but I wanted to know exactly who he targeted. There are a multitude of questions that I need to ask about who exactly he kills. Research into serial killers has helped psychology over the decades. So what happens in the butterfly effect when you don't have those serial killers? And he has looked into human psychology. You can't change history. What about serial killers who had their own children? Eileen Wuornos had a child at 14, but it's implied in the book that he killed her before then. So what about that? These children are different from the victims that the killers would have gone on to kill. Because rather than being saved, stopping innocent people from never existing in the first place. I mean, this man would argue that's collateral damage. It's not. Media portraying fictional killers has, in turn, influenced pop culture, for example, Freddy Krueger. This would not have happened otherwise. Yes, I know that's really low down on the list, but I just wanted to put it out there. Many laws were created, or technology created or altered in the aftermath of crimes, such as the presumed abduction and murder of Adam Walsh by Otis Toole in 1981, went on to create the the code Adam that shopping centres in America have when a child goes missing in a mall or maybe somewhere like Disneyland. Essentially, this man is endangering more children. Anyway, chapter 3 goes on to describe the Great Depression. Oh, I'd also like to mention, he says here, they've always been around. Men, women, young, old, it didn't matter. They've always lurked in the shadows. It's only recently we've given them a spotlight. Serial killers have existed for as long as humans have existed. I mean, think about it. There might be bodies out there in archaeological digs that weren't victims of sacrifices, but were actually victims of serial killers. Kind of makes you think. So why isn't he going back that far? Is it because the language has changed too much? Is it because they didn't have guns then? I don't really know. So it talks about somewhere in Arkansas. If I can learn to pronounce Arkansas, Americans can learn to pronounce Thames. Sorry if that's describing about purple beauty berries and against the crow's haunting chorus. Again, it's an idea of what you see. A quaint little town. Let's talk to him reaching a small clearing. A front row to an all-American boy crouched down all alone. An 11-year-old with short dark hair, wearing a red clean t-shirt. His jeans neat and unwrinkled. First day of school clothes. I'm not sure if they had t-shirts in 1929, particularly dark red ones. If somebody who knows a little bit more about the history of fashion can help me with that, then post a comment below. I mean, I'm not really sure. He's building little houses and using rocks and twigs. And then we learn that this killer is Mac Ray Edwards. You may not have heard of him, but in the 50s and 60s, Mac Ray Edwards killed a number of children around the Los Angeles area, and it's estimated that some of their bodies are buried beneath one of the highways. I have a little, not entirely certain that one of the victims that was listed as his is actually Edwards, but I digress. So Kevin seems a little nervous at first and actually spends quite a while playing with Mac, helping build the little houses. The boys going on about getting fried chicken later, doing a Halloween costume, and starts walking back to the house with him because it's his lunchtime. Children definitely were a lot more carefree in the 20s. The boy, Kevin goes, "That sounds good, Mac." When the boy stops and goes, "How did you know my name?" "I didn't tell you my name." "He's an evil killer," I tried reminding myself. I tried to remember the evil, the future evil. Finally, I confronted Mac Ray Edwards. "I know who you are, Mac," I said, keeping my voice steady and soulless. The executioner's praise I'd preached into me. Seeing Mac shiver before me, I retrieved the pistol. "And I know what you become." So he points the pistol at him and shoots him. If Mac Ray Edwards got away if I accidentally killed an innocent, I'd face consequences, and worst of all, confront my own tortured subconscious. Particularly if I let the boy survive and grow up to be the serial killer he was destined to be, then I'd be the one at fault for those 6 or more victims. So, chasing him and getting to kill him basically go over 2 or 3 pages. No, wait, 4. So, he shoots him in the leg and then actually kills him. 40 pages in and we've already got 3 child deaths. And that's not counting the deaths of the 2 adults. And we're not even at the main story yet. This is just sickening. Absolutely sickening. Why the heck did I buy this? What was I drinking when I bought this? What was this guy drinking when he wrote this? So, Mac's father, I don't know his name. I don't know if it was ever recorded anywhere that I would be able to access. Screams, "You son of a bitch, you killed my son." Chases Kevin, and unfortunately does not end up shooting him in the head as well, but ends up running into the woods and moving forward in time. Curiosity compelling me, I read the newspaper articles from the Arkansas press in that era. My murder even reached the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. It was murder. It was unjustified murder. You do not need to put murder in quotation marks. It was, no, not unjustified. It was an illegal murder, not carried out by the state. Illegal. I don't care what your excuse is. There is no excuse for killing a child. I don't care what they become. As the decades passed, no, that is one sentence. He put a full stop instead of a comma. Mac Ray Edwards being gunned down remained one of the creepiest cold cases in the state's history. They had the description the boy's mother and father gave them, that of a handsome middle-aged man with curly blonde hair and big glasses. Yeah, I'd hardly call my child's killer handsome. And now it's gone to chapter 4. We're back in Perry, Florida in 1970. And we meet our other main character, Detective Sarah Barlow, who is pretty high up in the team, I think, in Perry, Florida in 1970, despite the fact that she is an African-American woman. Now, I don't want to say that this is inaccurate. I have no idea what police work was like in the Deep South back in 1970. But I think I have a very strong feeling that this is inaccurate. If anyone from who knows, who remembers 1970 Florida or has a pretty good idea of what it was like, could tell me what the likelihood was of an African American woman becoming not only a policewoman, but a high-ranking policewoman in the year 1970 would be, especially considering that I have no idea how many policewomen of all races there would have been in America at the time. Can tell me if this is absolutely stupid or not. I mean, I know that in the 1960s in Britain, I'm technically I'm from Northern Ireland. And that is not to be confused with Ireland, by the way. A lot of people are going to get cross with you if you say that. I mean, there. I know that in the 1960s in Britain, they'd only just started placing policewomen on the force. I'm not going to go on about the differences between America and Britain and how liberal each one would be, yada yada yada. But I think you get the point. Anyway, back to this atrocity of a book. So she's taken Kevin's journal and she's reading it. The accounts on John Wayne Gacy and Mac Ray Edwards disturbed her. You're not the only one, love. The handwriting done with a permanent, precise pen. The words conveyed with conviction. The stories involved a man killing innocent children Sarah had never heard of. His reasoning built off a twisted sense of justice, off orders from the future. Yeah, I kind of think you're a lunatic too, to be honest. So, in fact, Sarah actually thinks he's got schizophrenia. So she looks around at her desk, where there's a picture frame showing her with her 5-year-old son Brandon. Remember him. It could have been him, she thought. What if he had killed Brandon? Swears, and then her, I wouldn't say partner, but fellow deputy named Gerard comes in. Remember him too. I mean, asks, do you believe all that time travel stuff? Sarah says it's definitely a pretty big, remarkable story. I know you think you're smart, Gerard said in a confident southern twang. You know your shit. In most of these cases, you knock 'em out of the park. But this one's different. We're talking murder in the first right now. You got the guy confessing. So they end up swearing a little bit. Go to the interrogation room, where, again, I think this might have been due to the time period, but Kevin isn't even in handcuffs. He's just sitting down. I mean, the door's locked, but you wouldn't do that now. I read several of them. You did? Kevin remarked. Yeah, I just want to know what the point was. I told you, is what you wrote true? Of course it is, Kevin said in that clinical tone. He pointed at the book. Think about it. Why would I write that? I detailed everything. But for what? Why? Why? Kevin cackled. He looked over at Gerard's soulless scowl. I had to keep track for them, for the retroactive. The people you worked for? Sarah asked. Hesitating, Kevin just smiled. No, as a matter of fact, that's not the main reason, Detective. He shifted in his seat, surveying the barren room, the isolation. But I don't understand. Why write so much? Kevin faced her, the lousy lighting doing nothing to subdue his intensity, his sharp stare. I did it for me. Again, he's a psychopath. So they ask why he killed the family. And he says, points out that there were cats being strangled, and said Christine Falling was strangling cats. And he actually goes on to say later in the book that he wants to stop killers before they even kill animals. So why'd he wait until after Christine Fanning started strangling cats? I don't know if she did this in real life, but I mean, come on, Kevin, Sarah said. These are kids we're talking about. Exactly, Gerard grumbled. To you, Kevin replied in that methodical tone, but where I come from, they're killers, Detective. But John Gacy, Christine Slaughter, Sarah continued. Christine Falling, Kevin corrected. Sarah threw her hands up in frustration. But again, Patsy and Ben were married, and they later got divorced. Christine kept her mother's name. She'd go on to kill cats, then kids, even babies. Kevin's voice had become a rapid-fire encyclopedia on all events that hadn't happened yet, not in 1970. So we learned a tiny bit about Kevin. It says he served in the US military until 2035. And he goes on about liking literature even before he joined the project, and having been sent back in time to kill them when they were children. I'm serious, Kevin went on. There's hardly any murders at all. Everything is safe. There's caution and control. There are no assholes running around shooting schools up. That's not too common in 1970 either, buddy, Gerard remarked. So Sarah asks, so by 2040 all of this violence is gone? Kevin nodded. Serial killers, mass murderers, we have them under control by then. He turned that smile toward the plodding tape recorder, the fat machine. Our technology only gets better as well. Oh boy. So why do you enlist? 2040 sounds an awful lot like utopia to me. More like La La Land, Gerard added. That is the most sensible thing the man ever says in this book. In a theatrical performance, Kevin pointed at himself. Look at me, detective. I couldn't have killed Mac Ray Edwards now, could I? 1929? Do I look 60 to you? Sarah tapped on the journal with a prosecutor's touch. A suspicious, compulsive river. Okay, so maybe not him, but these other cases we're looking into. Hey, whatever you want to believe, but with our technology, our government just wanted to help. That's why they launched a retroactive in the first place. Retroactive, yes, there are a lot of things in hindsight, aren't there? Okay. Gerard starts shouting again. So you're telling me your imaginary fantasy land was to save little old us out here in Perry, Florida? Is that why y'all travel across decades to kill little kids? That's a bunch of bullshit if I ever heard it. Sarah rolled her eyes, doing her best to match Kevin's restraint. And this idiot's our best deputy. So Kevin gives off a list of names. 5 names. There were the children that Christine Falling killed. From what I found out, Christine Falling started killing people in 1980. She was a babysitter who murdered little children. Okay, you can stop doing that right now. I know that you're in another tab looking it up, so please don't, okay? Thank you. So she killed children that she was looking after because she wanted attention, I think. I don't quite remember. But I do know that she killed a lot of children, and I think an old person as well, but it's not recorded here in the book. Maybe because children make better victims. Remember that, you idiot, Fordham. So Gerard asks, what about the Zodiac? What about the man down in Texarkana, the Phantom Killer? And Kevin points out because they weren't identified, so that's why they didn't kill. And says they also didn't kill Manson because nobody was sure of his complete culpability. I'm not sure if that's true or not. It takes more than that to warrant an assassination. The same with all those other guys. Kevin looked over at Sarah's ever watchful gaze. All girls who were never caught. And then they mention O.J. Simpson. I'm from the generation where if you heard O.J. Simpson's name, it's usually because you were a crime buff, or you liked seeing him being beaten up in Naked Gun. Oh, and they mention Adolf Hitler, but they mention him with a PH instead of an F. With a guy like Hitler, the effect is it's too strong. He talks about the butterfly effect. Again, like I said, this man causes paradoxes. Kevin causes paradoxes. Someone like Hitler's too evil, and he just affected so many lives. That's also probably why he's not going back too far. I mean, the first recorded serial killer was in ancient Rome. I believe Nero's own poisoner. But he didn't go that far back because it would create too much of a ripple. I mean, that I understand, but it doesn't explain anything else. Well, that's mighty inconvenient, Gerard's growled, his glare so proud. Sounds like you can only kill certain kids. Sarah pushed her bangs aside. I would say that's a lot of loopholes. Oh, loopholes, not explaining them. So it says he's channeling a Shakespearean actor. He looked back and forth, and there's no space between the words back and between Sarah and Gerard, his Perry audience. They happen, but it can't be too often. The project doesn't like that. See, we can't change history too much. So Sarah asks, why can't you just take them to the future with you? Kevin actually says something which did chill me a little, but didn't even lead up on it. So we have a possible route here, a possible story idea, and he's not even, doesn't even end up on it. He just goes, 400,000 children go missing in the States every year, detective. Now, when they say missing, they actually mean 99% of children are just runaways who turn up after a couple of days, or kids who've accidentally stayed out too late. You don't think some of them came with me? See? And then he says they still acted like little animals. He said there was nothing you could have done about it. Oh, if you're taking a child who has he was built that way, I personally believe, this is my own theory by the way, that it's a mixture of nature and nurture. So psychopaths who become killers, anyone who becomes a killer, come from, it's not just the homes they grew up in, it's the way their minds are built as well. And it's the right combination of genetics and the place, type of home that you're living in, type of suffering that you go through, type of losses you have in life, loss of a parent, loss of a sibling, loss of a home, even abuse that lead to someone copying it out. Even then, they don't all become killers, but some do. I think it's a mixture of that. And if you take a child, no matter what home they come from, decades into the future, of course they're going to end up like a little brat, just screaming and trying to run away from them. And of course they're going to end up miserable. It didn't really help anything. So Kevin just pushed his finger onto the tape recorder and absolutely stopped it. Again, if they'd handcuffed him, it probably would have done better. Yeah. So we go into chapter 5, another flashback of Guanajuato in Mexico on August the 4th, 1929. Again, it's a good description. Dilapidated shacks, no trees, mariachi music. His targets are Delfina de Jesus Gonzalez and Maria. Now, I actually looked this up, and their names are roughly right. I think both of them had Delfina as a first name, but I'm going to have to look this up. Delfina is 16. And Maria is, I think, 3. I'm not certain, but again, I think his maths was off. And they're playing with baby dolls, some of them half naked, dismembered. Delphina and Maria would go on in real life to run a bordello from hell that would kill over 90 people. So he shoots Delphina, then he shoots Maria. There in the heat I got a child, and chill just watching such pitiful sadness, her helpfulness, hearing that high-pitched Spanish accent. Yeah, you're a nitwit. And talking about the two sisters actually reminds me, what about killing teams? Like the over here, the Moors murderers, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, or the West, or in Canada, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. Some of them may, says, I quote, some of them may not have become murderers if they'd never met their partner. They still might have become sociopaths, but they wouldn't have become murderers. Do you pin down? What about serial killers who were not caught and their crimes were never linked? Not like the Zodiac or Jack the Ripper, whose kills definitely were connected, but people who would, say, kill in one location, holiday in another location, kill someone there, then eventually move halfway across the country, kill someone else, rinse and repeat for a few decades, and then end up dying, and their crimes are never linked because there's no DNA, they don't find the bodies and anything. Killers who are out there spend their entire lives without even a traffic ticket to their name. What do they do? What about those killers? You can't even connect them because they were never listed as killers. What about them? Their crimes are still going to be out there. Just confusing. Or if somebody was only known to have murdered one person but was suspected of many more, but never actually proven, would that still be on the guy's list? And what about people who killed their own relatives, like I said before? People who'd killed their own relatives. Who may not even have existed if it wasn't for the killer existing in the first place. Chapter 6. And this is what I like to call the paradox. August the 23rd, 2015. Okay, so this chapter is about a fictional serial killer called David Wash, who started his killing around 2033. Who ends up killing 6 girls under the age of 10. Thankfully, there's not much record about that. So, the thing is, it says here that Kevin used to go to school with David Wash. So, he goes into the school parking lot, desolate track field. Again, I didn't go to an American school. I have no idea what they're talking about. But even so, you'd think there would be a little bit more security, don't you? After all these kills, I still wasn't used to it, man. Then again, who would be? Especially when you were assigned to assassinate a childhood classmate. Ah, yes, guns in school. The worry that everybody has. You're making it look positive. You're a toy. So he knows where David's going to be that day, because David was about to molest a classmate called Michelle Beckley. Just stands there, calls out the boy's name and shoots him. Now, what I like to call the paradox is that Kevin's younger self was just feet away. In the original timeline, he'd come across David and Michelle because David told him to meet there. Doesn't actually say why. David thought that Kevin would be interested in this, but to trade baseball cards. Kevin doesn't know that David's about to molest a girl and could stop it in the original timeline. But here, the older Kevin kills David and sees his 12-year-old self. His 12-year-old self runs away. So this is a paradox. He's changed his own history. It doesn't say whether he remembers the new timeline or not, which would have been an interesting way to go about this. It just says that he just leaves. Nervous, David held his hands up. I didn't do anything, I swear. For the first time on the job, I felt no reservations, no hesitation on that kill shot, no flinching when the young flesh and grooves splattered over me. This was redemption. Yet again, I know this is fiction, particularly since this is the only serial killer in the book who is actually fictional. Actually, tell a lie, but I'll get that. This is a real person. Sorry, no wait. Shit's not a real person, sorry. It's just exhausting looking at all this glee the killer has. It's unsettling. It's really unsettling. Talks about another killing, May the 9th, 1968, which is inaccurate because in real life it was on May the 25th. I mean, for somebody who put all this research into serial killers, he didn't get the dates wrong. Did he print it and not go back to check? It's about Sunderland, 1968. 100 years after Dickens' death, but it still looks like a Dickensian place. So he kills the Tyneside strangler, Mary Bell, an 11-year-old from hell. Described. If you want to be picky, it was actually the day before her 11th birthday, but that doesn't really matter too much. Mary's narrow eyes focused on me. Her black bob cut enunciated a round face, the permanent smile. Beneath the grey blouse was the body of a young killer, one with strength beyond her years. So, in real life, Mary Bell killed 2 toddlers. 2 different dates, about a month apart, I believe. And she was sent to prison until she was 25, I think. No, wait, maybe 23. She was sorry, I was getting a bit of cramp. She was allowed to live freely when she'd reached her mid-20s. Got her own daughter and granddaughter whose name's not been released to the public, and I wanted to stay that way because her own daughter and grandchildren are innocent in all this. Remember my previous quote. I think the boys' mothers, or at least one of them, are still alive, and they think that Mary got off lightly, and I believe that too. But well, it's just tragic talking about all of this. I mean, it's one thing talking about an adult killing children, but children killing other children. It's just rips you up inside sometimes. It really does. In fact, he even describes Mary as a monster. I didn't realise he's a complete monster. In fact, Sarah actually thinks, why would he write so much? Why would he be this dedicated? Thunder blared outside. It has thunder in italics and all capital letters because that doesn't have anything at all. Oh, I forgot to mention, Kevin's killed 20 children by this point. Well, at least 20 entries. And yet again, the OCD in me wondered, who did he kill? When did he kill them? Which order did he kill them? Probably just me, really. It says that someone's finished looking up the names that they were talking about. Looking up meant something a bit different in 1970. I think he just called the other police departments. Would have been a bit of a problem in Britain because it's overseas, but still. The police department, not the place Sarah ever expected to be checking out hot 24-year-olds. Yeah, I know you fancy your partner, but... We ran the names, Sarah said, keeping her tone strong, in control. You weren't lying, Kevin nodded. Not completely, anyway, Sarah added. I'm telling the truth, Kevin said. He held up the coffee, letting steam decorate him like a fog in a cemetery. Those kids would have grown up to be serial killers. That's the only part you don't get, I'm afraid. He took a quick sip. The only part you'll never know. But that's the problem, Kevin. There are no criminal records for any of these kids. John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Eileen Wuornos. If you did kill them all like you said, you were killing innocent people. Kevin shook his head. None of them were innocent. Gerard glared at him. And we're just supposed to believe you. Sarah hesitated. He's not backing down. Either he's convincing himself or he's starting to convince me. Well, yeah, some of the shooters are described as looking similar to me. It says that I killed Christine Falling in the same way I killed all of the others. The first killed, he keeps a K for killed. See, right here. I killed Christine Falling. You can tell this book was self-published, can't you? He's either crazy or pure evil, no different from the other losers. Yeah, that's what I've been saying this whole review. Goes on about how great the 21st century technology is by the fact he was able to look it up in minutes rather than weeks that they would have done, as they would have done in 1970. It goes on about the phoning being charged. Reference to Star Trek. Again, this thing is just utterly silly. Then get to... Yes. The 1970s weren't exactly a welcome time for a black female detective. That's what I said earlier. Especially in a town like this. I'd say that's pretty damn impressive. Then with methodical slowness, he moved in closer, going one-on-one with Sarah. And all by the age of 31, too. Playing off this freakish conversation, Sarah waved at the little Ziploc bag. Did you get all of that in your phone? Oh, they've been talking about the phone. Kevin's smirk remained. All my information's in there, Sarah challenged. Everyone's is, Kevin replied. And aggravated Gerard, who motioned at the cell. So just go, all your little friends, and I'll pick your sorry ass up. Kevin gave a quick laugh. I already told you. It's not that simple. He pushed his golden hair back. He's got it golden. My work isn't finished, Deputy. He looked over at Sarah, basking in her intrigue, especially with you, Detective Barlow. So you see, there's something else a bit out of this. Kevin's getting a bit nervous, and then he starts talking about Sarah's son Brandon, and asks about his father, what happened to him, psychological warfare, mentioning. I'm too busy being a detective, Sarah said. She paused, not to hide the emotions but embrace them. Being a mom as well, Kevin confronted Sarah, but every boy needs a father. At first, Sarah was surprised. But the detective spirit took over. Motive time, Sarah wondered. Did daddy issues lead to killing kids? That affects boys and girls, you know, Kevin said. Abandonment from any parent, it can change their development. All these killers I have to execute, most of them, they come from bad homes, broken homes most of the time. I understand, but deep down Sarah wondered where this was going. What's his angle here? So, stay close to Brandon, Kevin went on. Take care of him, love him. He needs that. I do love him, Sarah said, unable to disguise her defensiveness. Mama Barlow was now overtaking the detective. I couldn't help but find the 2015 story interesting. Story? Kevin scoffed. Sarah smiled. That year's a long way away. Not for me, it isn't. Playing off his smug snark, Sarah opened a journal. I just remember you talking about how personal that murder was for you. Kevin grabbed the cup. I'm not the murderer, detective. He took an icy sip, never looking away from the detective. Keeping her detached persona intact, Sarah flipped to the 2015 account. Right, sorry, she scanned the story, but David Wash. Kevin placed a mug down. What about him? I mean, it says here you grew up with him. Sarah pointed him to the page. You went to school with him, correct? I did. I don't know, it's just... You really showed more passion here. In his writing, you talked about redemption, how much you wanted to kill this guy. Did Kevin want to do that right from the age of 12? Because if so, he's just as violent as the other killers. But I already said... talking about how there's a certain order you have to follow, the retroactive. And how, when he went with the Edwards kid, because he'd taken some time to kill him and hesitated at first, the retroactive were a little weary with him. It goes on to the fact there's only a couple of more stories left. Chapter 9, March the 21st, 1949. So he's in Lorain, Ohio. And excuse me one sec. Sorry, I've just been talking for an hour. He goes to a liquor store. I think it might have been a fictional liquor store, but I'm not certain. He glances down at the phone, the retroactive's latest text. Samuel Little, 7 confirmed victims. Now, when this book came out, Samuel Little's confirmed victim count was far higher than 7. That's something else that made me think that the writer, Mr. Fordham, wrote the story and then didn't go back to change anything. See, one tip you have about writing is never publish your first draft. It might sound mean, but if you look at your first draft and you look over and over it, you start to think that there are some things you could have changed. And that's why you should never publish your first draft. Sees Samuel Little taking apart this coin machine. Nobody else there. Refers to him by his nickname, Choke and Stroke Killer, but I'm not sure if the "and" was supposed to be capitalised. And here is where we learn about how hypocritical the retroactive can be, because it says that the retroactive says, do not kill him. Another vibration brought another message. 90 victims confirmed. Drop the mission, Kevin. So the retroactive is saying, if you kill too many people, there's a butterfly effect. And then you won't, because then too many people are affected. Well, how many is too many? Gacy killed at least 33, I believe. I'm not sure how many Bundy killed, but the general idea is that he killed 36. How many is too many? I guess that means Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, is off the list. Or Pedro Lopez from South America, who it faces an absolute travesty because he was actually let go. It's possible that Pedro Lopez went back into the jungle, although there are rumours that families of the little girls he killed managed to get him. See, vigilante justice is a bit different when they're not children. Stop, Kevin. Little affects too much. Stop the mission. iPhone kept vibrating in his hand and killing him, saying saving 90 people can only help us, especially when it came to extinguishing a monster that would never change. How many was too many? Of course, when I was actually wondering this, I wonder what would have happened if Kevin had tried to kill the Winchester brothers from Supernatural. Because if you've ever seen Supernatural, then you'll know that within the first 7 series, scattered about mainly, the Winchester brothers stop monsters. And sometimes those monsters ended up killing humans, where the Winchester's fingerprints and DNA would be all over there. One of them actually imitated a brother in the first season, and which was why the brother was wanted by the police, arrested, I think, but managed to get away. It's been a while since I've seen that episode. Even killing another episode, a demon called Lilith tried to, no, actually she did, kill a police station where the boys had just been arrested, killed an entire police station, including an FBI agent. And so even though the FBI stopped looking for the brothers because after season 7 because they're declared dead, the funny thing is they'd still be in the record as killers, which means that if Kevin had actually gone back to kill them, it would have been an absolute disaster. And the Winchester brothers were being looked over by angels, so Kevin definitely deserved to be blasted into pieces by an angel, which is how I feel a bit better, really. Now then, chapter 10, February the 12th, 1993. A sad day in British history. So immediately after killing Samuel Little, Kevin goes further in time with another mission, but on that day in Liverpool, he had more than one intention in mind. I blended right into 1993's crowds and sights. No one paid me any attention. Not that there were many people out and about. Not the further and further I followed those 2 10-year-olds through their journey to torture. Their young victim, a boy, Tony Jones. And if I didn't stop his killers, Tony would never make it to his 3rd birthday. I wasn't even British, but I understood the horror. The morbid magnitude with which this crime played out. How not just England, but the world struggled to wrap its head around 2 10-year-olds in Robert Thompson and John Venables committing a crime most heinous. Now, I understand. Half the country wanted those little brats dead as well. Because 2 10-year-old boys adopted a 2-year-old boy named James Bulger. He's called Tony Jones in the book because in the epilogue, the author says he didn't want to use the victims' real names to give some respect to the family, which I understand, but it still made the book uncomfortable. Venables and Thompson adopted 2-year-old James Bulger from a shopping centre where he was with his mother. James had just stepped out of the butcher's that his mother was in for just a couple of seconds. The older boys took him. There's a CCTV picture Venables leading him away by the hand. And they took him to some railway tracks, beat him with bricks, covered him in paint, tortured and killed him. And the police were saying they could understand the mind concept of a pedophile taking a child, but 2 little boys? Venables was arrested back in 2010 after he'd served his time in prison for another crime. I'm not going to mention it here in this video because it really makes me sick to my stomach. But what I'm saying is that I agree with the author when they say that some people can't change, because it's unfortunate and true. And it's just tragic. On an interesting note, out of all of the missing children in Britain whose cases have received coverage, James Bulger is the only child I can think of who happened to be an inner city working class child who received moderate attention after he went missing. It might have been due to the fact that his killers were caught on CCTV taking him away, and they happened to be children. But other missing children in Britain that received attention have often been middle-class children. Millie Dowler, Sarah Payne, the girls Robert Black murdered, Soham murders. They were all middle-class children, or children who lived right out in the country. No family problems, no history of violence at all. This was compared to a girl who disappeared shortly after, whose body was found around the time Millie Dowler went missing. A blonde teenager called Hannah Williams, but she'd been in and out of foster care. She was the child of a single mother. She had a nose ring and repeatedly ran away. And her attention didn't, and until her body was found, she didn't garner any missing person's attention at all, really. So, it seems to me that when it comes to disappearances, Britain tends to be classist. I mean, it's not always like that. An 8-year-old boy called Vishal Marota, whose case has sadly not been solved yet, disappeared in 1981. And my parents actually remember when he went missing. I hadn't been born yet, but they remember when he went missing. Although, and as you can tell from the name, he was an Indian boy. I can't remember what class he was from, though. Although it could have been due to the fact that he disappeared during the royal wedding in 1981. That might have been a reason for interest. But what I'm trying to point out is, when it comes to missing children, it seems to me that class is more of a factor than race. I'm not going to get too involved in that, I think. But, I mean, I don't think I've got too involved in it, but the point I'm trying to make is that James Bulger's case received more attention than other working class children's murders during the last 60 odd years or so, regardless of race, because he was seen being taken away by two other boys. Anyway, so at this point, he watches them take the boys out. The retroactive texts him saying, "Get to where you are." He's waiting because this man is actually supposed to be targeting another killer. He follows the boys, knowing where they're going to kill him. Retroactive saying, "Get out of there, leave him alone, do your job." Points out all of the people who'd walked past the three boys, even though that James had been crying, saying that even though the locals were innocent, he'd wanted to kill them too for just ignoring this. The public were hardly to know that two 10-year-old boys were about to kill a little kid. That's another thing, the bystander effect. So he shouts, "Hey!" to them, shoots them. Robert first, and says that when they were now murderers who killed together, now buried together in adjoining graves, their matching bullet holes the closest thing to a halo they'd ever get. Oh my word! He's a psychopath! He gives the answer from the retroactive's latest text, saying, "We told you to leave them alone. They were not serial killers." I scoffed in disgust. First, Samuel Little killed too many people. Now Robert Thompson and John Venables had killed too few. Another text hit me. "That's it, Stephen. We said Stephen Akimurel. I think that's how you pronounce his name. That's the reason you're here. You're done, Kevin." So he just leaves the railway track, looks at Stephen Akinmural. I can't remember if the boy was a Nigerian immigrant or if his parents were the immigrants, but nevertheless, the cul-de-sac killer, who was then 14, would in a few years go on to murder 5 elderly people. Parents weren't home, preparing for a battle, looks over at the little boy, his eyes lock, and then Kevin just walks off towards Stephen's house. At this point, I could go rogue. I had the phone, the notes, the names, so why the hell not? There are a lot of killers out here. Unbelievable. Did he just leave a 2-year-old on the street by himself? I mean, I know there were gunshots, so people would hear it. Also, guns have been pretty much banned in Britain. Even the police have to have a special license to have them. And didn't anyone find a gunshot suspicious? This was only 6 years after the Hungerford massacre, and that one was out in the countryside. Someone would have noticed. You just leave a 2-year-old boy in the street. Unbelievable. Something else I would like to point out is that Robert Thompson said that he received a better education in prison than when he was free. What does that tell you about nature and nurture? So, those were the last killings. And Kevin starts to show Sarah how the phone works. And gets to the date, shows her that it's real by showing that the phone has a lot of tabs, and she seems impressed. I mean, I'd be as well. And then asks about Sarah's son. Well, where does he stay? Clothing class. I'm just curious. Not giving in to Kevin's charming curiosity, Sarah brushed her bangs aside, deliberating on an answer. His grandparents. Ah, Kevin remarked. It's safe, you know, Sarah said, unable to hide a mother's defensiveness in her tone. That's all I care about. Kevin held his arms up, acting out a harmless aura. I understand. It's none of your business anyway, Gerard said in a southern snarl. Oh, I know. Kevin looked right at Sarah, further adding to her anxiety. I just wanted to make sure the kid was okay. He is, Sarah. Kevin stretched back, airing out his arrogance for the audience. With you, I mean. I've got some names, especially around here. Where? Florida? Sarah responded. Nodding, Kevin ran a hand through his hair, his headband as well. Yeah, there's one in particular I'm looking into. He gave the cops a subtle smile. One in Perry. Sarah gave him a confused look. You mean there's another killer? There's a lot of killers in Florida. So he then goes to show, I'll get him Perry. Kevin brings up the article on his phone. Now, aside from the fact that these wouldn't be written for several years, wouldn't the articles have disappeared by this point because he's killed the people involved? Picture of an older Christine Falling, and the older Christine Falling who would now never exist. And then points who he really came for. In fact, I don't actually know how he manages to record this. But, I mean, a bulky living room from the era, bulky TV, leather sofa, shine carpet. Then it shows the Deputy Gerard John Schaefer, skinny woman. The revolver up and down her body. And Gerard immediately shouts, "What the hell is this?" And Kevin says, I came for you, Deputy. This is where I get all my evidence. How was he able to record that? Did he just record it at the house somehow and then just let the girl die? I mean, that goes against his entire mission. That doesn't quite work. That's you, Deputy. You kidnapped her after work before killing her. You murdered her. You know you did. You got your jewelry at her house right now. Now it was Sarah's turn to stand. Keeping her cool, she staggered up from her seat, her sharp mind more disgusted once she saw Gerard ready to strike Deborah in that video. You mean this is the future? She yelled at Kevin. It's not the future, Kevin immediately replied. It's the past. So, Gerard is John Gerard Schaefer.